Hello, I'm Panos Kotsathanasis, and this is ASEAN Movie Pulse Reviews. Today I'm here with Holly M. Kaplan, whose film Sunflower Girl we recently reviewed for our Submit Your Film initiative. How are you, Holly?
I'm good. I'm good. How are you?
I'm good, I'm good. So, to start with the questions, I read that the movie was sponsored by Netflix. Can you tell me a bit about that?
Yeah, so in the States, there's not really any public funding for the arts. So, filmmakers and artists have to really turn to grants or crowdfunding. And for us, I didn't want to do crowdfunding for this film. So me and my producer, we spent like a whole year applying for grants from like private organizations and nonprofits here. And one of them, the one that we ended up winning, was uh, sponsored by Netflix and in partnership or really hosted by the National Association for Latino Independent Producers, or NALIP. And it's for women of color here. So they, I think, funded the grant with them through their like Fund for Creative Equity.
Hmm. Were there any demands, though, from their part, or they just gave you the money, and how did it work?
No, I mean it was very open to like independent filmmaking. Um, the only things that we went through was like kind of, I feel like good preparation for, I think, just working as a professional filmmaker, which is, I applied with the script that I wrote. I submit the script, and like a resume or a CV, and I think maybe a few questions or very basic kind of outlines of our budget and, just the specs of what we intended to accomplish. And we had a meeting with them. They interviewed us. They went over everything. And I think after that, it was kind of just some mentorship and guidance with helping us just to make the film that we wanted to make. And there wasn't any, like severity of uh, art or criticism of like how we should make it. They like gave us notes, but it was open to us to accept or reject the notes. um yeah, so it was kind of a good experience to have like a outline of what it's like to working with a studio, but it wasn't like so severe where we had to follow what they're saying.
Okay, good, good. And tell me a bit, what is the inspiration behind the story of the film? How did you come up with it?
Yeah, sorry, I live in New York City, so it's very loud. And that's like kind of the inspiration. I mean, I grew up in New York City, uh, and my family, my mom, she's and her family are from Hong Kong, and so it's kind of like a story that weaves my experience growing up as like a second generation New Yorker, with like my mom's kind of history growing up as like the immigrant experience, where like my great grandfather, her grandfather owned a Chinese laundry, like which isn't what's in the film because they don't really exist anymore in New York City, but it's like I guess a dry cleaner is a good equivalent now. Um, and that's like the backdrop for the main character and kind of her experience in school with like the boys and just navigating like her life here in New York is more similar to I think my experience growing up and kind of like a more diverse environment in New York City because when my family was growing up here or like living here, immigrating here, there was like no diversity really for them.
Hmm. So you identify with the girl protagonist in a way?
Yeah, yeah, I think so. I mean, it's not like nonfiction, it's based on some things that have like happened or stories from school and just growing up in New York because I think the experience of growing up here is so distinct. And that's like definitely what inspired uh the whole kind of plot.
Hmm. Hmm. And tell me a bit about her relationship with her mother. There is a generational gap there, but there's also something more. So can you tell me a bit about that?
Yeah, I think like the relationship with her mom is very interesting. and there's a lot like going on there that's like under the surface. And I think that it outlines kind of this dynamic that exists like for I guess Asian immigrant or diasporic families in the West, where she's like Rosie is was like born here, and she's kind of she's trying to kind of make her own life for herself now as she's like getting older, and that's interfering with her relationship with her mother, where she's raised a different way. She's trying to bring her up in a certain way, and it's kind of coming in conflict with each other, with the skateboard being kind of like this metaphor for that.
Hmm. And so far as I know, like the concept of family as is really important for families as you described the diasporic ones, and also food plays a significant role, at least as so much as we watch from the movie. So at some point, the protagonist kind of betrays both those concepts. So I was wondering how would you describe that? It's a betrayal, let's say.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's a good point. I think I noticed that too. Like when I go to like, Asian American or Asian Canadian festivals, like a lot of big theme is like food and family, and that it's like such an overarching theme. I think the reason why is because like we are disconnected from what the majority or like the mainland is. And so like this is like a way of kind of trying to constantly reconnect with like a missing connection to feeling like belonging to a larger piece. So like the food and family is like it becomes so emphasized because it becomes like some identification of like who you are or like your family or culture or just belonging anywhere. So yeah, I think her kind of doing these things that are betraying it like, on paper might seem like objectively, uh, like, oh, that's not such a maybe a big deal or something, but then for her, like, it's such a huge, like, kind of treasonous thing and like within the culture to to go against like her family and also like a food her mom like made her. So yeah, it's like the whole kind of cultural significance of it kind of ramps up the meaning for her doing it, even though for the boys it's like they don't really care or know.
Mm-hmm, hmm. Okay, but like in the end, I thought that the meaning was like family versus love. The first one wins, let's say. So is that your message essentially?
Yeah, I mean, I think like it's kind of bittersweet. It's kind of like, yeah, like family like maybe does win, but it's kind of a responsibility that like she can't ever totally like ignore from her life. Um, and maybe like she's going against what she wants like in her ego, but she still has to deal with at the end of the day she has to go home. She's only 13. She has to face her mom. She has to still deal with her sister. So I feel like it's kind of this bittersweet feeling where she doesn't get everything she wants, but it's like she'll still have like them understand who she is really, like who she's not lying as, like trying to pretend to be. And yeah, I think I don't know, it's like a kind of like it's happy, but um it's also not at the same time. I think that's like the irony of it.
Hmm, hmm. And can you tell me a bit about how the casting worked for the movie?
Yeah, the casting, it was a very interesting process, because we went through a lot of local actors, online. We did like casting calls on social media. Like some local actors we have is the mother Fanny and the little sister Abigail, and Daniel, who's like the best friend. He's a non-actor. He was like a skater. And then for Rosie for the lead, like we tried a lot of local actors in the casting calls, but they weren't like the right age, and it was kind of difficult with 13 because they're either they're too old or they're too young, and that was when I ended up. I told my casting director and producer, like they were asking me, if I could think of people, and I had just seen After Yang, and I was like, well, I mean, I just saw this film, and this girl was amazing, but maybe she's too young, or I don't know how old she is now. And yeah, they reached out to her team on IMDb, and yeah, the rest was history with it, because yeah, she was like very incredible in her audition, and she like wrote the song like at the end in her audition.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and
Mm.
yeah, so it just kind of was uh it was like, oh yeah, that's like Rosie for sure. Yeah, and it was hard finding the mom, because there's really not many actors who speak Cantonese in New York, which is surprising.
Hmm. And the other kids, the little sister and the boys?
Yeah, the little sister, she's like a child actor who's like local here. Like she's done local productions, and I know she like was on like Sesame Street.
Oh.
So she was like, her mom like has her, profile online on Backstage, and yeah, that was, we had a lot of young girls like we auditioned, and I think like she had like the really strongest tape. So we gave her scenes that like were not in the script. I gave her the scene from Totoro, where May and there she's having a fight with her sister, and the goat is like there, a whole scary sequence from that film, and basically she has to cry in that scene because she's left alone. And Abigail like actually was crying in her tape, I remember, and I was like, wow, like she's really good. I was really impressed with, and that was kind of how we got Abigail, because like her tape was incredible. Like it really stood out among everyone else. And Cairo was the Skylar. His mom saw our casting call on Instagram actually, so that was like how that happened.
Hmm. Hmm. And tell me a bit about the cinematography in the film, what you want to do in the visual aspect. You do this very interesting thing that the style changes from to retro sometimes to a music video style. Tell me a bit about that.
Yeah, yeah, I worked with our cinematographer Michael Kong. He's really talented. He's incredible. I think, and also he's also done music videos. Like I think we both do music videos. I think that played a lot into the film, which I like, because I feel like um this kind of lifestyle, like skate movies, like music videos, really kind of work within that genre of coming of age. Like it feels like it all kind of works together. um and yeah, we use Super 8 for some of the film, that kind of shows like Rosie's internal world, to differentiate like her internal monologue, like what's going on in her head, versus then she's back to reality, which we had a Ari actually, through our sponsorship through the incubator grant, like they gave us the camera package, so it was digital, the footage. There's Super 8, then there's the regular digital footage that we had. So it was like a really incredible camera that we got to use. And we wanted to still make it like, even though we wanted to use film for the whole thing, we used kind of vintage lenses to help like still solidify like this retro look. Yeah.
Hmm. Hmm. Okay. And regarding the editing, how did you work on that department for the pace of the film, let's say?
Yeah, I worked with our editor Haley. We worked like very closely together. I liked working like basically side by side with Haley. Like I would give some notes, like, she did like a rough cut and I'll give notes, but then it honestly, everything worked so well when because she lives in Brooklyn, where we would like sit side by side, like, and just have a really fun time, like editing the film. Like she would work through it. I would like, we would just like kind of make jokes, and just like, she really understood the story really well too, and felt like very connected to it. So yeah, we had a really fun time editing. Yeah, and I think it was really challenging in the beginning when she gave me the rough cut, and I think a lot of people can relate. Like when you first see that, and you're like, oh, like like we have a lot of work to do. Like this is like, oh no. So
Mm.
yeah, I felt like a lot better, going through it together with her.
Hmm. Hmm. And which one was the most difficult scene to shoot, would you say, and which one, let's say, the favorite of yours in the film?
Yeah, that's a great question. Um, I feel like everybody was so talented. I think all the actors in the crew, they're like incredible. I would say I think the most difficult scene to shoot was maybe the lunchbox scene in the courtyard of that school, just because of it was just I think I don't know why it was so hard. I think it was this location. There was like this pressure shooting there because the parks department here in New York City, like they let you shoot. We had like a permit. Everything was like cool, but then there were like these out external things happening that like no one really knew except me and the producers and the location manager. Like there was going to be some volleyball tournament that was supposed to like
Oh.
happen like in the afternoon, and we don't have like much time with the kids. They have to go to school. So it was hard like trying to get through the lunch scene just because like and my production designer and her assistant like they had to keep on like giving like new bows, new like soy milks, and just resetting the food constantly where they're like trying to because that scene was very improv and it was like they had to kind of get warmed up, like we all had to, I think the crew too, like we all had to get warmed up into like this really loose style of doing the scene to then get it to like where it ended up. And we ended up using things that like weren't scripted, that they were just like saying to each other just to like help the energy of it. It was like everyone had to get warmed up enough to then feel comfortable, and it took like a while, and there was all these things going on. Yeah, and I think like I don't know the favorite scene. Yeah, I don't know. I think maybe sorry for the
It's
silence.
okay, no worries.
Um, the dry cleaners, I feel like that might have been like yeah, that was pretty good.
Okay, okay, good, good. And tell me a bit, how is it now shooting movies in New York, let's say? How is the experience in general?
It's good. It's like everyone, I think this is a question I get a lot where because if like, I mean, it sounds really chaotic and it's very chaotic. But it's like, it's so unique here. It's like the energy and everything and the whole city, like you can't like recreate like the setting of it. It's kind of priceless, like location. Uh, yeah, I think it's hard. I think just being prepared for anything that can happen is like and I think
Mm,
growing here, like I think I feel like okay with it because I know. I think maybe if you haven't spent enough time here, you might be like totally scared about it, like just overwhelmed. But I think because I grew up here, I feel like, oh yeah, no, I think it happened. So yeah, I would definitely still, I mean, I still shoot here, so yeah.
okay, okay. The last question, I guess, future projects. What are you working on next? Any future in the plans?
Yeah, I'm like currently trying, to keep developing this script that's the feature kind of version of this short film of Sunflower Girl. So that's like a long process in the works. So yeah. And then, maybe some more music videos in the meantime, but yeah.
Okay, okay. Well, I guess that's it. Thank you very much for your time.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, okay, good, good.